Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Canada's Labour Minister has had enough and has asked the Canada Industrial Relations Board to send 55,000 Canada Post workers back to work. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is outraged that a June European trip by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his entourage cost taxpayers huge money. And the Alberta government announces millions of dollars going towards sport and recreation centres here in the province.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Canada's Labour Minister is asking the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to send around 55,000 Canada Post workers back to work. The board has to agree with Stephen McKinnon's assessment. The negotiations are at an impasse. McKinnon says the Crown Corporation and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers are nowhere closer to agreeing on a new deal. He says negotiations are going in the wrong direction.
Today I've used my powers under the Canada Labour Code. It is my view and the view of the FMCS that the parties are at an impasse. I have asked the Canada Industrial Relations Board, if they also determine that there is an impasse, to order Canada Post and all employees represented by CUPW to resume and continue their operations and duties and to extend the terms of the existing collective agreements until May 22nd, 2025. During this time, an Industrial Inquiry Commission will be established. Mr. William Kaplan will fill the role of Commissioner. He is an experienced negotiator and has a clear understanding of Canada Post and its union. The Commissioner will be tasked with examining the structural issues preventing the resolution of the current labour dispute.
Some of the key issues in the strike include wages, job security, and how to staff a proposed expansion into weekend delivery. Canada Post says with the strike, they're unable to deliver 1 million parcels per day. The 2-month GST break beginning tomorrow and running for 2 months is nothing but a tax trick which gives Canadians a lump of coal in their stockings this Christmas. Now that's according to Ontario Conservative MP Tony Baldinelli, who says what continues to hurt Canadians the most is the carbon tax, along with the spendthrift attitude of the Trudeau government.
Groceries, gas, and home heating are getting more and more expensive, and a 2-month tax trick is nothing but a lump of coal in Canadians' Christmas stockings. As we await the fall economic statement, the Finance Minister has to worry about carbon tax Carney breathing down her neck as the Prime Minister tries his best to entice him to take over for her. Liberal tensions on deficit spending are said to be causing this internal Christmas conflict. But common sense Conservatives can offer some advice to help. Just stop. Stop all planned tax hikes, especially the job-killing carbon tax hikes. Stop fueling inflation by cutting wasteful spending and axing the sales tax on new homes. And stop adding debt by confirming that the deficit has not crashed through the $40 billion guardrail the Finance Minister promised. Canadians need this reckless, wasteful, and incompetent NDP Liberal government to stop so we can start a carbon tax election and bring common sense solutions Canadians need and deserve.
It turns out Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's 4-day trip to Europe in June cost taxpayers close to $1 million. Trudeau and his entourage traveled to Italy and Switzerland June 13th through the 16th to attend a G7 summit and a summit on peace in Ukraine. Now, to talk about this in more detail is Franco Terrazzano. He's the Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and he joins us from Ottawa. Franco, how many joined our Prime Minister on that costly trip?
Yeah, it was about a 40-person delegation. But look, this is outrageous. I'm sure some Canadians are going to see this and going to feel sick to their stomachs because the total cost of this trip was just under $1 million. On food alone, they spent $71,000. And remember, folks, all of this is paid for by taxpayers, struggling taxpayers back home. And if you just do the math, like on average, each one of these delegates spent $1,700 on food, and this was a 4-day trip. So, the per person spending on food for Trudeau and his entourage was more than what the average Canadian family spends on groceries in an entire month. And like, let's just look at some of the airplane meals that they were having, right? Veal, lamb, ravioli, chicken, 4 different types of wine. For dessert, they had raspberry cheesecake coulis, chocolate and pistachio cake, Swiss chocolate cake as well. So this is a prime example of the government living high on the hog with our tax dollars.
Raspberry cheesecake coulis. I have to try some of that. Now, Franco, it's important to catch a few movies if you're flying to Europe. And didn't some of the bureaucrats also pick up some DVDs along the way for the trip?
Yeah, they did. I mean, $102 worth of DVDs. Like, this is crazy. Not only that, they also spent like $800 on junk food. Again, billed to the taxpayer. You know, Red Bull, they had pop, chocolate bars, Swedish berries, fuzzy peaches. But you know what's so infuriating? On top of this, you know, almost $1 million trip, $71,000 on food, is that we've seen this time and again from Trudeau. Remember, a 6-day trip to the Indo-Pacific in September 2023 that Trudeau took for work. The government spent $220,000 on airplane food. Then there was the time that Trudeau and the government billed taxpayers $61,000 on hotel rooms in Manhattan during a 2-day anti-poverty summit. Or remember the Queen's funeral in London, England, when Trudeau stayed in a $6,000 per night luxury hotel suite. So enough is enough. Canadians are sick and tired of the government living the good life on our dime.
Thanks so much for your time today, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. French President Emmanuel Macron named centrist ally François Bayrou as his Prime Minister. Experts say the appointment was in response to the country's deep political crisis after a historic parliamentary vote ousted the previous government last week.
French President Emmanuel Macron has chosen a centrist ally to become the country's new Prime Minister. François Bayrou, 73, now faces the difficult challenge to address France's political crisis. Bayrou has been a crucial partner in Macron's alliance, and his political experience is seen as key in efforts to restore stability, as no single party holds a majority at the National Assembly. Bayrou is expected to hold political talks in the coming days in order to choose his government members. Last week, outgoing Prime Minister Michel Barnier was forced to resign because the far right joined the left to pass a no-confidence motion at Parliament. This time, Bayrou hopes to be able to rely on moderate lawmakers from both the left and the right to be able to stay in power.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken made an unannounced stop in Iraq on Friday on his latest visit to the Middle East. He is urging nations to support a peaceful Syrian political transition.
In all of this, what's happening in Syria does have an important impact, and it's very significant that Iraq, along with many other countries in the region and beyond, will make best efforts to support the Syrian people as they emerge from the Assad years. And we are determined to make sure that Daesh cannot reemerge. The United States, Iraq, together had tremendous success in taking away the territorial caliphate that Daesh had created years ago. And now, having put Daesh back in its box, we can't let it out, and we're determined to make sure that that doesn't happen.
TBN Israel correspondents Yair Pinto and Mari Shoshani discussed the rapid fall of the Assad regime in Syria and the impact the Assad family had on the Syrian people.
Tiny ethnic minority, tiny religious minority that ruthlessly controlled the country
for more than 50 years.
More than 50 years.
Yeah, with the father and then the son.
Two generations, they switched generations. Bashar al-Assad, the son, was this character that was an oxymoron. He's this very soft, was at least when he started, soft-spoken, seemed to be like, you know, like the wind of change and revolution.
He's like an eye optometrist or doctor, whatever like that.
And everyone thought he was going to be this gentle guy. He was as bad as his father was.
No, he threw chemical weapons on his own people, bombs, and just now, you know, records and images are coming out of Syria, the atrocities that the Assad regime was doing against the Syrian people for more than 50 years. It's just amazing to me to see the situation, because I grew up in the IDF and officer school and all that, and we trained against the defensives of the Syrian regime. Do you
Yes.
remember all the
I remember very
pita
well.
surit, like the Syrian pita or something like that, which is like the outpost of the Syrian military. And for years we trained how to battle against these kind of defenses, and they don't exist anymore.
Yes.
It's like it's hard for me to grasp.
No, it's amazing. Again, this didn't happen overnight. The Syrian country diminished for many, many years because they were led by a dictatorship that corrupted every aspect of that society.
Alberta's Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis announced that more funding is on the way to help combat human trafficking here in our province. Ellis says fighting those who prey on our most vulnerable takes a multifaceted approach, which includes prevention, protection, and prosecution. Ellis says since 2022, the province has invested $20 million in an effort to eliminate human trafficking altogether here in Alberta. That includes $5.5 million to be used this year and $5.5 million for next.
The goal of this grant is to provide specialized trauma-informed supports for victims of survivors of human trafficking, increased awareness of the challenges faced by victims, and reduce the risk of re-exploitation of survivors. Funding can be used to support victims and survivors along with the continuum of services. This can include immediate emergency support to help victims exit trafficking, as well as supports for survivors as they rebuild their lives and navigate long-term challenges.
The Alberta government also announced $4.2 million will be going to increase access to sport and recreation centres across the province. Officials say the funding will be used to create and rebuild 12 facilities, including those in Calgary, Edmonton, Grand Prairie, Lacombe County, and Athabasca. Minister of Sport and Tourism Joseph Scow says with the Active Communities Initiative, more people will be able to enjoy the sports they love. Scow offered a few examples.
Indoor and outdoor pickleball courts in Grand Prairie, a retrofitted curling rink project in Legal, multi-purpose courts in Whitecourt, pool renovations in Sundre, gymnasium upgrades at Windsport in Calgary, upgrades to the Medicine Lodge Ski Club in rural Lacombe County, and many more amazing projects that will benefit their local respective communities. I can also say that our commitment includes an investment of $1.5 million to the IQ Tennis and Pickleball Center to upgrade the outdoor Jasper Place tennis courts in northwest Edmonton.
The Alberta government also announced their plan to continue work on Calgary's Green Line that would increase ridership on a decreased budget. An assessment from AECOM researched the feasibility of elevating the downtown route rather than tunneling underneath. Minister of Transportation Devin Durishan says this step would save more than $1 billion and increase ridership by around 60%.
We hired AECOM to go look at a new alignment in the downtown part of Calgary's Green Line. And it was remarkable the amount of savings that they found of not having to tunnel underneath the city, but to be able to have an elevated track going through downtown. And the savings that they found were remarkable. It was over $1 billion that could then be put into the farther south part of the Green Line. So it's stretching about 76% longer down to the southeast part of the city, going all the way to Shepherd, which equates to about 20,000 more people being able to be a rider to actually use the Green Line going forward. So to really save those costs downtown, to still connect to downtown, but also to use that to go farther south is just a really great news story for taxpayers as well as for Calgary commuters.
Government officials say the line would grow by 17 kilometres and increase the number of stops from 7 to 12 while remaining within budget. Minister Durishan says the ball is now in Calgary City Council's court to approve and get construction underway. Durishan adds the timeline to complete the project is the year 2032. Officials at the City of Calgary say they passed the final hurdle to approve the building of Calgary's new multi-purpose arena, better known as Scotia Place. Calgary's Planning Commission unanimously approved the final development permit on the actual building itself. Preliminary work such as digging and grading has been ongoing since July. Scotia Place will cost around $900 million to build, with $515 million coming from the city. An additional $300 million will go to the public realm work, bringing the total to $1.2 billion. The arena will have a seating capacity of 18,400 for NHL games and a capacity of 20,000 for concerts. Scotia Place is expected to be completed and open by the fall of 2027. An alert investigation resulted in the arrest of 8 drug traffickers who were selling fentanyl here in Lethbridge. Alert's organized crime team busted the street-level drug dealers in the downtown core who were allegedly selling the drugs. Over the course of the investigation, police seized close to 13 grams of fentanyl powder and close to 3 grams worth of methamphetamine. The 8 suspects who will appear in court are charged with various drug-related offenses. Officials with Alert say if you suspect any drug-related activity in your neighborhood, to give them a call right away at 1-800-222-8477. You know, it's no secret that there's a drug crisis all across Canada. In 2023, Lethbridge in southern Alberta lost 153 people to overdose deaths. It's an upsetting statistic. And according to Ken Kissick, co-founder of Streets Alive Mission, the drugs of today rob people of their hopes, wills, and lives.
Today's drugs, unfortunately, are the fentanyl and the meth. They actually just take away all hope. Their whole sense of self-preservation is gone. We experience people outside our center with their fingers turning black who refuse to come in where it's warm because we won't let them bring their drugs. So they stay with their drugs outside. And then the next thing you know, they're in the emergency hospital having to deal with frostbite.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Ken Kissick from Streets Alive Mission coming up later in our program. Officials at the City of Lethbridge are reminding residents to practice safety this Christmas holiday season. Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services says that December is one of the busiest months in tackling preventable home fires. Chief Fire Marshal Troy Hicks shared practical tips to make sure all homeowners can stay safe during the holidays, especially when it comes to cooking and decorating.
One of the biggest things we want to remember when we're cooking over the holiday season is just pay attention to what you're doing. Lots of times we'll have a house full. Everyone will be making merry and having a good time, and people are in the kitchen cooking that they want to bring stuff out and mingle with everyone that's out there, and we're not paying attention. So obviously we want to be very careful what we're doing. You don't want to wear loose-fitting clothes around the stove when you're cooking. You just want to eliminate that risk. You want to make sure that if you're cooking with grease, it's being attended. You don't use water. Have a fire extinguisher with you when you're in the kitchen. If you don't have a fire extinguisher, make sure you have a lid beside you when you're cooking, especially when you're cooking with grease. Make sure when you're decorating your house, have a look at all your items before you put them up on the tree or in the home. Make sure you look at your wires. You want to check and make sure that the lights are working. Not a device like this where half are off and half are working. You also want to look at extension cords. When you're using extension cords, you want to make sure they're not like this, they're not frayed, they're not damaged. If they are, dispose of them, get yourself a new one.
Now, other tips that Hicks offered included making sure that all exits in your home are clear of any obstacles, clear objects away from space heaters, and to always inspect your chimneys. Tim Hortons owners across Lethbridge gathered at the downtown Scenic Drive location to present a check raised from the week-long Holiday Smile Cookie campaign. The initiative lasted for 1 week in November and raised over $37,800 that would be split between Tim Hortons Camp Foundation and Green Shirt Day, which supports organ donor awareness. Toby Boulay is co-founder of Green Shirt Day and the father of the late Logan Boulay, who succumbed to his injuries in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash back in 2018. Half of the $37,000 raised will go to Green Shirt Day Foundation, which will be split again between the Canadian Transplant Foundation and the Logan Boulay Endowment Fund.
The City of Lethbridge, the community of Lethbridge is amazing. They support the Boulay family and all that we do, and the Holiday Winter Smile Cookie campaign is just another example of how they step up and help us as we help them. Our community is special. Lethbridge is a special place to be. It's wonderful.
Thanks to the Boulay family, all the volunteers, and the community for supporting the program. You know, we did very well. That's in excess of 25,000 cookies in a week. That's a good turnout, especially if you look at the weather we had during the cookie program. That tail end of the week certainly kicked everybody with the fridge, freezing, right? So and the snow, but we still did very well. So.
Logan Boulay's organ donations helped save the lives of 6 people. The Boulay Effect inspired close to 150,000 Canadians to register to become organ donors in the years since then. Well, we had sunshine mixed with cloud today in Lethbridge, and we're above the freezing mark. The mercury will be climbing even further on Saturday. A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. We were above zero again today here in Lethbridge under a mainly cloudy sky. Tonight it should be partly cloudy with a low near -4. As we kick off the weekend, expect a few clouds developing with a high of 9 degrees on Saturday. Not too bad. Cooling off slightly to 3 degrees on Sunday. Monday, things will cool off even more under a mainly cloudy sky with a high of only -2 degrees. Tuesday, many of the clouds should blow away, giving us more sunshine, but the mercury dropping down to about -4. Look at Wednesday's forecast, though. Partly sunny and a high of 12 degrees, then cooling off under an overcast sky on Thursday to +1. Now, the average high for this time of year is 0 with an average low of -12. The record high was 15 degrees set way back in 1908, and the record low was a very chilly -35 back in 1922. The sun rose at 8:21 and set at 4:31. Let's see how the rest of the country is shaping up for Saturday now. Expect more rain along the west coast, showers at 9 degrees for Victoria, rain and 7 degrees is on tap for Vancouver. Calgary should be mainly sunny tomorrow with a high of 3 degrees. Edmonton partly cloudy and a high of -3. Let's have a look at the rest of the prairies now. Regina should be mainly sunny and a high of -6. Saskatoon cloudy and a high of -3. Lots of clouds rolling into Winnipeg tomorrow with a high of only -8. In the central part of the country, Toronto should be mostly cloudy with a high of 0. Sunshine and -8 is on tap for Ottawa. Lots of blue sky and -7 degrees for Montreal. Over in Atlantic Canada, expect sunshine and -4 in Fredericton. Sunshine and -3 degrees for Halifax. A cloudy and -3 as well for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, it should be overcast with some snow mixed with rain and a high of only -1 on Saturday. The federal government is intervening in the 29-day Canada Post strike, saying the Crown Corporation and its employees are at an impasse. Labour Minister Steve McKinnon is asking the Canada Industrial Relations Board to rule on whether a deal seems likely by the end of the year. If not, 55,000 employees will be sent back to work. If the board agrees with McKinnon, union members will be told to return to work till May, while an inquiry is launched to determine why the two sides are so far apart in negotiations. Key issues in the strike involve wages, job security, and how to staff a proposed expansion into weekend delivery. Wholesale sales were up last month across Canada, rising 1% in October to $83.7 billion. Stats Canada says the move came as sales increased in 6 of the 7 subsectors it tracks. In a separate report, the federal agency says total manufacturing sales rose just over 2% in October. They were boosted by a jump in petroleum and coal sales, along with an increase in transportation equipment. A weakening loonie has many Canadian travelers making budget-conscious decisions. A BMO survey found nearly a third of Canadians felt the cost of international travel is now far too expensive for their budgets. Bank officials say the exchange rate situation is pushing some to economize their travel budgets or even shorten their stays in the United States. They also say less Canadians are also going out to fancy restaurants or limiting their entertainment options. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 136 basis points to 25,274. The Dow was also down 86 points to 43,828. The S&P 500 was down under a point to 6,051, and the Nasdaq was up 23 points to 19,926. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 105 to 71.7 cents U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 18 cents to $3.27 U.S. Gold was down 39.10 to 26.4840 U.S. an ounce, and silver was down 66 cents to 30.56 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.33 per bushel, barley is at $6.62, canola is at $13.97, and corn is at $7.87 per bushel. Live cattle were up 152 to 193.65. Feeder cattle January contract was down 70 cents to 257.65, and lean hogs were up 175 to 83.72. And the Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 70.30 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, striking Canada Post workers could be headed back to work within a matter of days. Federal Labour Minister Steve McKinnon has moved to end the nearly month work-long stoppage by referring the dispute to the Canada Industrial Relations Board. Striking workers say the key issues involve better wages, job security, and how to staff a proposed expansion into weekend delivery. You know, many cities across Canada are having issues with homelessness. Sadly, many who are battling addiction are living on our streets. Now, there's a Christian nonprofit group in Lethbridge that is doing its part to not only help feed, clothe, and house those most vulnerable, but also to share the good news of God's saving grace. Catch my interview coming up shortly with Ken Kissick from Streets Alive Mission coming up shortly. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. With the rising cost of living these days, it's having a serious impact on those who lack affordable housing. Thankfully, we have some dedicated people right here in Lethbridge and different organizations committed to providing help. Joining us to talk about some of the challenges for those who are living on the streets, the working poor, and those with addictions is Ken Kissick. Ken is the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge. Ken, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
Me as well. Now, Ken, for those who are not familiar with your ministry, what is Streets Alive really all about?
Ultimately, Streets Alive is about making sure that we're looking after the vulnerable in our community, looking after their emotional, physical, spiritual needs. Ultimately, we're trying to connect them with Jesus Christ, and through that, be able to help their lives. But in the meantime, if they're cold, if they're hungry, if they're homeless, they're not willing to necessarily listen to good news. So we demonstrate the good news through our actions.
No, I love that. Ken, our temperatures here in southern Alberta can become very frigid during the cold winter months, as you're well aware. Can you explain how that kind of weather really impacts those who are living on the street?
Well, ultimately, we have an emergency shelter, but for a variety of reasons, there's a population that doesn't want to use those resources. And when they're caught out in the cold, as for example, this morning it was -8 or -9, that's frostbite temperature. And so these people are subject to frostbite. They're subject to hypothermia, all of those things. They're a vulnerable population. Their immune system's weak. So it can be deadly long before we think of those temperatures in -30 and -40.
So with inflation going through the roof and everything being a lot more expensive these days, are you seeing more people on the streets, or is it about the same?
Our homeless street addiction population continues to grow. It's just part of what we're doing. The inflationary thing, you're going to start seeing here in Lethbridge, what Calgary has been fighting with for a little while, and that's people living in motorhomes, trailers. They just can't afford housing anymore, and so they're reduced to finding accommodation, and you'll have families living in a motorhome.
You know what? It's a story we recently had on Bridge City News. You're right. People who had to sell their homes, they couldn't afford their homes anymore, and are living in an older RV.
Yep, and that's coming. We're not keeping up with affordable housing. And unfortunately, it continues to have long-term effects. And once people start to lose hope, then they start to drift into the things that will take away that pain. And now you're into drugs and those kinds of addiction. And today's drugs will kill you pretty quick.
So from a lot of the people who you've interviewed, you've helped over the years, those who are battling drug addictions, is it a form of escapism for a lot of them? Or maybe they're hurting and maybe covering a lot of that pain?
Absolutely. No one gets up in the morning and decides they're going to become an addict. Addiction comes out of some form of trauma, and then that leads them into addiction. And I mean, we've got people that were involved in an auto accident, and then you're taking oxycodone or something for that pain, and then that just drifts into an addiction. You'll have others where you have abusive relationships, sexual abuse. You have long-term trauma, and ultimately the pain of the trauma, they just want to kill it. Today's drugs, unfortunately, are the fentanyl and the meth. They actually just take away all hope. Their whole sense of self-preservation is gone. We experience people outside our center with their fingers turning black who refuse to come in where it's warm because we won't let them bring their drugs. So they stay with their drugs outside. And then the next thing you know, they're in the emergency hospital having to deal with frostbite.
So do a lot of your volunteers use naloxone kits? Do you teach them how to use that to help somebody who may OD?
Yes. Largely it's our staff, but anybody that's involved in our outreach receive training on naloxone. Lately, we haven't had to do as much of that, but it's cycles. But yes, they're trained in that. They're trained in what we need to do to be able to help the people. We have staff that does intensive case management. We're working to help people through a navigation center to get off the street and out. Hence, the other side to us is our recovery programming.
Ken, I remember when I was there a few years ago and Julie took me on a bit of a tour, your wife, your beautiful bride there, and she showed me this beautiful mural of so many of the people who you've helped over the years, many who suffer from addictions, who are homeless, and many on that wall, she said, are now gone. And that just really tugged at my heartstrings, and it brought a tear to my eye when I saw that. And because a lot of these people you're helping, they become friends and family.
They do. We're very connected to them. This Lethbridge in southern Alberta in 2023 lost 153 people to overdose.
Wow.
That's significant. And it's going up because the drugs are deadly. And there's a new one. It's been out there for a while now. It's mixed. It's called xylazine. It's a horse tranquilizer, large animal tranquilizer. They're mixing that within it. And what that does is when people get injured, they get a cut, it doesn't heal properly. So we're dealing with massive infections. And we just heard that a couple of days ago that one of our street people that had an infection in her leg and wouldn't deal with it passed away.
Oh, no. So Ken, how can viewers really help your ministry? What kind of donations, and maybe do you need more help with volunteers at Streets Alive?
We're always looking for volunteers. Because we have a variety of areas. We have our repurpose center, which is collecting and helping with clothing and furniture for the immigrants and everybody else. We have our pin bank downstairs. If those that have a heart for outreach, we will train them, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's a real life changing ministry, and you got to be up for it.
I can see it also being very rewarding at the same time when you see the difference you're making in many people's lives and maybe how some of those lives are changed.
Our current outreach leader, I won't say her name, but she actually came. We got her off the street. She came through our program, and she has been clean for year and a half. Talented lady, very dedicated to reaching the hearts of the people, and that's just one of a lot of stories. Our addictions recovery program has we have about a 80% success rate of getting people past 120 days. We graduated over 90 people last year out of that program. Wow. We are seeing families reunited, fathers getting visitation rights with their children, getting back into productive society. So there is hope for these, and the biggest thing that we are trying to bring to the people is hope, because they have none. And they need healing, and there is only one healer. So that is our entire purpose: is to introduce people to the gospel of Christ, and then walk with them as He ministers to them, bringing them out of that darkness. We serve a God that brings people out of darkness into His marvelous light, and we're just one of the vehicles that He uses for that.
Amen. Now, Ken, you have your annual Coldest Night of the Year walk, which is coming up on February the 22nd. Can you explain what this is all about and how our viewers can maybe get involved?
So they just need to, right now it's open, the portal's open. They just need to type in Coldest Night of the Year or CNOY Lethbridge. they need to then find Streets Alive because there's two of us here, and then they just follow the links. They can either register. We would love people to put in teams, but everything is done online. How you raise your money, how you get people to donate, it's all there. It's very simple, and basically what it is, it's a 5K walk that will start at 5 o'clock on Saturday, the 22nd of February. You'll see the route in the website. We have hot chocolate and something after, but it's a family event. So we're encouraged, bring your families, walk in the cold. Now we've had days where it's +5 and we've had days where it's -25. But really it's designed to just give you an experience of what it means to be out in the cold for a while. It takes about 45 minutes to walk for 5K. And so on those chilly days, you'll feel what a street person feels like, except they don't have a warm place to get into.
Now let's talk about another initiative that you have at Streets Alive. It's called Stuff a Bag for Streets Alive. An opportunity, big opportunity, as we approach the Christmas holiday season.
Yeah. So what that is, you come on in here, get a blue bag. It's blue in color. It's called Stuff a Bag, and you stuff it. You stuff it with food, or you stuff it with clothing, socks, new underwear, whatever you want to stuff it with. And if you want to, you want to do it as a family, you take one or two of those to Walmart, and away you go, and you just stuff them. And we've seen them come in like you can barely carry them, but it's great. And we've had, if you're part of a small group, sometimes you come down, get 5 or 6 of them. Maybe you're leading a youth group, whatever. Anybody can be in it. We love them. They're great, and it's a great promotion this time of year.
And very rewarding, absolutely. Ken, you have some interesting programs at Streets Alive as well. Can you share a bit about Exodus Men's Life Recovery Program, and for the ladies, the Genesis Women's Life Recovery Program?
Correct. So this is what we call Recovery Road, and it includes the men's and women's recovery program. So this is a program by which people, once they've done detox, they've kind of started the process of getting down the road. They join the program. It includes safe, secure housing. So that's part of their program. And you do a 30-day initial, and then you do 90 days of programming. And then we encourage another 90, but really the 120 days, if we can get people kind of on the road in 120 days. And a lot of the people who come to the program, some of them are people who do know Christ and some don't, but almost everybody has engaged in a relationship with Jesus Christ at the end of that 120 days, which really is the key to their success.
Earlier, we chatted a bit about affordable housing and the lack thereof. Are you seeing more people on the streets who are maybe coming from the Middle East, from Ukraine, from other countries? Or is it kind of 50-50 between locals and those from other nations around the world?
The immigrants are well looked after. We don't see too many of those out there unless they've got caught up in addiction, okay? And then they're out. What we are seeing, though, is that downward push because of affordability. People can't afford a house, so you have a better class of renter. So then the landlords raise rents, and that just pushes down. So we're now starting to see we've already seen them, but more working poor, more families that struggle are getting pushed out. And in some cases, you now have 2 or 3 families living in a single place. They're packed together. That's not healthy. And then some of them, like you say, you start to see the tents and the campers, and they're just making away. And unfortunately, we are still struggling with red tape and the ability to build affordable housing quickly in our community, or repurpose housing quickly. We need to deal with that.
Ken, how much help are you receiving municipally and from the province at the same time?
Little, not much. We have some grant applications and things out. I mean, we certainly have great support from our local MLA and municipal council, but they're restricted in just how much they can do. And obviously, when things like the exhibition building and that thing comes up, it chunks into funds that they may have for other uses. But ours has always been our trust and faith in God and the people of God to respond to Him, and we're seeing great things. You know, a lot of people are nervous about the postal strike. That it affects us. We get a lot of donations through the mail, but people are finding a different way to get to us, and they're getting it to us, and we're very grateful and blessed. Because ultimately we serve a God who always looks after us.
So Ken, I want to circle back to how you're really planting seeds for Christ here with your ministry. To what degree does faith in Jesus really impact individuals in their recovery journey?
Oh, it's the absolute key. Let's face it, all of our lives without Christ would be wasted because we would be in charge of ourselves, which was never good. The faith in Christ and their ability to allow Him in brings healing, it brings strength, it brings hope, because that's who He is. So that while we do all of this other stuff, it has a single purpose. If we are not introducing people to Christ, then we are wasting our donors' money and we're wasting our time. So we really try to focus. But that introduction comes through action. It comes through us living our lives before people and them seeing Jesus working in us and us being able to say, well, He'll work in you too. It is when you see that light come on in there, when they receive Christ and the light comes on, it is something that you can't describe in people's lives.
Ken Kissick is the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge. Ken, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
If you're like me and you've got private insurance and benefits, you may be scrolling through what is covered and wondering what you could get treatment for, especially as the year gets closer to the end or at the start of the year when our benefits reset themselves. One of those things that you may be wondering if you need it or not is osteopathy. What is it? A lot of people don't know what it is. Well, I'm here with a practitioner who's going to answer one of those some of those questions for us. I'm here with Mitchell Lawrence. He is an osteopathic manual therapist at Reset Osteopathy at the Medicine Tree in Lethbridge. Mitchell, welcome.
Hi there.
So first off, can you just tell us a little bit what osteopathy is?
So osteopathy is a holistic manual therapy and it aims to identify and treat various different conditions, injuries or just pains that you might have. We use a wide range of different techniques ranging from joint mobilization and articulation, massage techniques, releases for different muscles or complexes, as well as exercises, all of which are prescribed to the individual's needs.
So what specifically does it treat, and can you give me some examples?
So there's really no exhaustive list of what it can and can't treat. We see people with arthritis, headaches, just lower back pains and aches. We also treat nerve conditions such as sciatica or carpal tunnel, for a few of the more common ones you might have heard of. But then we can also treat things such as recovery from surgery or injuries, or such as joint replacements, things like that.
I've heard some people compare osteopathy to kind of like a merger between massage and physiotherapy and chiropractic. Is that what would you say? Is that an accurate description?
Yes, a lot of people describe it in that way, probably due to the techniques that we use. We use different soft tissue and deep tissue massage techniques, but we also address the joints and the spine to try and release tension in there. But then we do give exercises as well, and these are suitable to everyone and they are prescribed differently. So that's the physio component that a lot of people would say, but really the combination of all of them is the way that we do our treatments.
So if someone has, say, lower back pain and they've got like a lot of they feel a lot of tension in there, their muscles are tense. What's the benefit of osteopathy versus just going to see a massage therapist?
So we work holistically. So that means we won't just look at the lower back, we will maybe look at your mid back, into the areas below it, into your pelvis and hips, but even down into your legs. We also look at lifestyle, previous injuries, because all of these can either predispose or maintain the injury that you currently have. So really using all of these components helps to get to the cause of what's going on, and that will make treatment more thorough and more effective.
Okay, so I'm curious to learn more about this, and you know, I mentioned lower back because I'm a person who's a side sleeper, and when I'm sleeping on my side, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've got pain in my sides and it radiates to my back. I do get some relief though with a pillow between my legs. Can you just explain what's going on?
So what the pillow will do is help to keep a more neutral spine and pelvis. When we are sleeping, lots of people will sleep in ways that could compromise their lower back or other areas such as their shoulders or neck. But the pillow is a really simple thing to do that can go between your legs. It shouldn't cause too much discomfort or affect the way you sleep, but it will make you wake up and not feel potentially as stiff. And then you could use that alongside exercises, for example, that we give, and that will help you get going in the morning.
It's funny that you mentioned pillows because it seems like one pillow is not enough, but two pillows is too many. Have you heard that complaint before?
Yes, and it takes our body time to adapt as well. So you might try one pillow, it might be not enough, two might be too many, but after a couple of weeks, two might be perfect. It's all different based on the individual.
So it's great that you're explaining all of this, but I'm more of a visual guy, and I'm obviously some of our viewers here are as well. Do you mind like demonstrating some techniques on me, and you know, just so the viewer can see like, you know, what exactly happens during an osteopathy session?
Of course.
All right, so I mentioned I've got some lower back pain from the way I sleep. Some neck strain. What do you recommend you perform on me today?
So first we'd have to look at how the joints are moving. So to do that, I will get you to do some movements, and then I will do some movements for you. Then I can have a palpation in the area that's affected, and using your feedback, we can identify what is painful, and from that, we'll then get into treatment.
Okay, great. All right, let's do that.
First, would you just be able to stand facing the other direction, just so I can have a look at your back, please? Okay. So I'm just going to place my hands on your hips, if that's okay.
Okay.
And so I'm just checking the levels of different landmarks in your hips, your pelvis, and your lower back. Is there any pain when I'm pressing in there?
No. It actually feels kind of nice because it's like a mini shiatsu when you're pushing in like that.
Almost like a little bit of relief?
Yeah, like a micro massage.
Yes, I understand. And then I'm just going to get you to take a seat here, please, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you could just cross your arms like that.
Okay.
Good. And I'm just going to reach my arm around the front here.
Okay.
I'm just going to be rotating your back.
So here I can see like the physio side of osteopathy.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is analysing how different parts of your back are moving. You mentioned how you've got that lower back discomfort, but sometimes we have to look elsewhere, and that could be contributing to what you've got going on.
Okay.
So would you be able to lay on your back now, please?
Sure.
If that's okay. And so we've just got, and then one leg at a time, I'm just going to lift your leg up straight. Do you feel any pain shooting down the back of your leg?
No, I just feel stretching.
Feel some tension? And if I lower your leg and pull your foot back, and then your toe, is that okay? No shooting pain? Good. And we're just going to compare the other side.
Okay. Just stretching.
Same, just that stretching. Okay, good. And then the foot and the toe. Is that okay?
Yep.
Good. So if you could roll onto your side facing me, please.
Okay.
I'm just going to take your lower back through the same movements that I've got you to do, standing up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to bend your legs. Good. And then I'm just going to move your legs towards and away from your body.
So what does you doing this versus me doing it accomplish?
So when you are doing it, you are actively doing the movement, which means you are activating the muscles as well. When I am doing it, you are passively doing that. So what it means is that your muscles aren't engaging,
Okay.
and I can have a better look at your true range of motion in the joint.
Okay.
Because sometimes if the muscle is the limiting factor, then I will be able to produce more movement than you would yourself.
Yeah, and earlier I said it feels like I'm doing a bit of physio. Now it feels like I'm getting a massage.
Yeah, this technique that I'm doing right now is a soft tissue technique, and it aims to just promote a bit of blood flow, break some tension in between the muscles. And what that will allow us to do is then move your joints and really release any tension that's in the joints as well.
Typically, do you have a certain type of client that you attract the most, like athletes or business professionals, or people with sedentary lifestyles, or people with very active lifestyles?
I get asked that question a lot, actually, and the truthful answer is I see all sorts of people. I see a mixture of young athletes, parents who have just got stresses from work, maybe injuries, or just from life, but also elderly people who have been having more chronic issues for longer. So yeah, there's no real trend to who we see. It's a really wide range of people.
That stretch you just did felt amazing.
Good, that should be helping to open up and release your lower back, but also into your pelvis.
How would osteopathy be complementary to someone who also visits a massage therapist and or a chiropractor?
So what we can do is we'll ask the patient maybe what their massage therapist or chiropractor is working on, so that we can then use that to guide our practice. But it will just help to further relax some muscles, release some tension in joints, maybe in between osteopathy appointments. So some people might come for an appointment once a month, but then in between that might go for a massage just to reinforce that relaxation.
Because I've heard that if you combine a chiropractic adjustment with a massage, the adjustment holds longer. Is that the same with osteopathy?
Because we do multiple techniques, a lot of people say that they feel after a session, it's almost as if they've had a chiropractic adjustment and a massage, because we work on the joints, not just the spine, but all the joints, as well as the muscles. So a lot of people would almost describe the effect of an osteopathic session to be that of a chiropractic and massage together. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work on your neck now. So I'm just going to see how it's moving first.
Sure.
So if I just turn your head that way and then the other way, do you see how it doesn't want to go that way?
Oh yeah.
As much.
Yeah. Is it because of side sleeping?
It could be many different factors.
Or like my pillow?
That could be a factor. Lifestyle, work, maybe previous injuries. There's lots that could be contributing to it.
I actually had a dull pain in the top of my head, and I didn't really notice it until it started going away just now. So have we become somewhat desensitized to pain?
Some people, if they've had chronic pain for a long time, the body's response to pain can change. And so some people might feel that something is less painful. Some people's bodies could get more sensitive to pain. So a stimuli that maybe wasn't sensitive in the past could now cause pain. And that's very different for every person.
What kind of training do you need to go through in order to get into this type of work?
So I trained in the UK, in Wales, and my program was a 4-year integrated master's course at Swansea University, and that's 4 years all in one go. And as part of that course, we have to do 1,200 hours of clinical practice.
Wow.
And so that is the way that you can then graduate, and after that you go straight into work.
So we know that chiropractors they have to follow regulations, same with massage therapists. What about osteopaths, or in your case, an osteopathic manual therapist?
So Here in Alberta, our regulatory body is the Alberta Association of Osteopathic Manual Therapists. So we have regulations with them regarding insurance, treatments, right to practice. That's different province by province, and so it depends whereabouts in not just Canada but whereabouts in the world you are. But a lot of the regulatory bodies will be very similar in terms of right to practice, what you are and aren't allowed to do as an osteopathic manual therapist.
So obviously we've been through some techniques here, and I must say, I do feel a lot more like my joints are more fluid. I can move a lot easier. Typically after an appointment, what would you recommend that a patient does to keep things kind of well oiled?
So we try and work with what a patient would usually do in their daily life. So we try not to say that they have to limit or restrict their activities, but usually after an appointment, taking it a little bit easy is a good idea, just so that we don't strain the body. It just gives that body time to respond to the treatment, but from the next day, they can get back into their normal routine, back into training, working, whatever that might be.
Mitchell Lawrence is an osteopathic manual therapist. Mitchell, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.